Jason, what's up, brother? So good to see you on the podcast, man. I was actually hoping that I could have, because you were at Origins Immersion Camp last fall, right?
I was. Were you planning on going?
I was planning on going. That's the first one I've missed in 5 years. So yeah, I was unfortunate. I lived out there in Maine, about an hour, 45 minutes, an hour away from where they hold immersion camp, which is obviously an incredible area. But then earlier last year, about this time last year, I moved back to Southern Utah. So a little bit of a trek for me this year and wasn't able to make it.
Dude, that immersion camp was so it was a really cool experience for me because I had met Jocko in passing. I had gone to Victory. I kind of it was definitely the time where I felt like I got to connect more with Origin, the brand. And then going to their factory was just like mind blowing. And then being able to roll jiu-jitsu like basically all day. And then I got to teach a CrossFit class, which was pretty cool. So yeah, man, it was great.
Oh
But
yeah,
hopefully
that's
you'll be
cool.
there this year.
Yeah, I have plans on being out there. I love being out there with the crew and everybody else, and I'd like to meet you and get a chance to train a little bit together. How long you been training jujitsu for?
8 years. So, kind of
8 years, cool.
yeah, I guess like my background is, so I'm a brown belt now.
Yeah, I was
And
going to ask brown belt probably right about that time. Yeah.
yeah, so for me, I competed in CrossFit for about a decade, and then my daughter got sick, so I decided to kind of pivot out of the sport. And around the same time, I found jiu-jitsu. I had already been subleasing some space to one of the gyms, and dude, I always like loved it. And then I got into it after that.
Yeah. Yeah. What did somebody get you into it? Did you have a friend or something? Or how did you get introduced to jujitsu? Because that's how I got introduced is somebody dragged me there and beat me up. And I think they were just getting me there to beat me up. I don't know, but I ended up liking it and sticking around with it.
So how long have you been doing it then?
4 years. Let's see, 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah, 4 years. Yeah.
Okay, so are you blue or purple?
Blue belt, blue belt.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
I had about 8 months of break in there. I actually ended up tearing I had a complete pectoral rupture on my left side. So it took me out of the game for a little bit. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back involved and getting heavy into it now.
Yeah, man. I mean, so I used to watch it a lot. I watched it because, like I said, I subleased some space for a while to a jiu-jitsu gym. I subleased later on to a judo gym. I'd always watch it when I was competing in CrossFit. Like, damn, man, it looked so dynamic. It looked so unique. It was really, it drew me in. And so then once I stopped competing in CrossFit, I was like, I knew I had to get into jiu-jitsu. So right now, I currently train about 2, 3 times a week. I just got back actually from jiu-jitsu right now. And then I add in my other training in addition to that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I did CrossFit for a lot of years, probably 5 years or so. And I really prided myself on being fit and capable. And even as I was growing up, athletic, but then you throw jujitsu into the mix and you realize how inadequate you truly are.
Dude, especially like, if you've been, yeah, uh, I was so used to CrossFit and so used to the way I was training there that then I got on the mats and it was just a night and day different approach, right? So much more dynamic, so much more technique to learn. And I love it. I love both actually.
Yeah, so obviously a big component of what you do is just making sure that guys are training hard. And I've looked at your stuff. I've been following you for a long period of time, CrossFit, Jiu-Jitsu, and I think you're really an advocate of those two things, but just being active in general. Like I see you jumping up on the tailgate of trucks or
Yeah.
going for a run, just doing whatever you can do at any given moment. I think this is so valuable because so many people live these sedentary lifestyles and men are just, they wake up with just enough time to take a shower, to get ready, drive an hour to work, sit in a cubicle for 8, 9, 10 hours, drive home, eat complete garbage, and then go to bed and do it all over again 5, 6 days a week. But you're living a life antithetical to that.
Yeah, I mean, my goal for my community locally is to create the fittest, most badass community around here. And so every week I host free men's club meetups, and these are just like free opportunities for people just to train hard and get after it. Like right before earlier today, I moved some rowers. Tomorrow morning, we have a group of probably 50, 60 guys to come hit some rowing workouts with me. So every week I'm hosting community events for guys only to connect with each other, to do something hard, to share suffering, all that kind of stuff. And I'm just a big believer that when I work out, when I train hard, whether it's on the mats, in the gym, or tactical stuff that I'm doing, like, on the range, I know that I show up better as a husband. I show up better as a father. And I know I've seen firsthand the byproduct of what training has allowed me to develop mentally that then translates into real life. The way I like to look at it is like intentionally doing hard things makes real life hard things easier to overcome is the best way that I like to describe it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, the harder you go in training, the easier it is in real life. And look, I mean, it's all real life, whether you're training at the gym, doing CrossFit, Jiu-Jitsu, tactical stuff, whatever you're talking about. It's all real life, but it's low consequence. You know, if you go to the gym tonight and you go train, other than, you know, having some sort of catastrophic, you know, random injury, there's no real life consequence to it. But missing the deadline at work, yeah, there's a real life consequence to that. Or not showing up fully as a husband or father, there's a real life consequence to that.
Dude. And so what we're really about, and at least for me, is when I think about training, I like the idea of like, I think all men should be able to at least embody, at least this is the way I look at it, is train, protect, provide. And so what I think about that is, I think when people think about what it means to protect, oftentimes they think initially like maybe combatives or firearms. That's a piece of it, but I think the biggest piece of it is you're more likely to, maybe your kid's gonna run into the street and you gotta chase after him. Maybe like my son fell into a fire pit a couple of years ago. I had to throw him out of it. Like those are real life things that I think are more likely to come up than you getting into some physical fist fight with some random guy or having to use a firearm. Do I think that you should be able to develop those as well? Of course. But I think at the baseline is what I think about training is like be able to protect myself and my family, run, jump, climb, lift, all those things. But I also think that guys should be able to provide. And what that means to me is like provide, there's a variety of ways you could look at it, but providing for me means like providing experiences, be able to go out there with your kids, go do anything. Like if your son or daughter is like, hey, let's go do this. You never have to say no because you're physically incapable of doing that. And training allows me to do that. Training allows me to go swim, go climb, go to the beach, go do any physical feat with my kids, go play football. And then it also allows me to hopefully provide more financially. And so, you know, if I hit a workout, I show up at work differently, right? I show up at work with more energy, more confidence. And those things I think will help me reach my potential better in the workplace as well to be able to provide more for my family. So at Train Hard, we're about train, protect, provide. And that's where I look at those things.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember when I started CrossFit, I was at a local parade, and they had just opened a CrossFit gym. A parade, yeah. I was just sitting, just watching the parade, and they had just opened up a brand new CrossFit gym, and people were handing out flyers and stuff like that to all the people who were watching the parade. And they handed me one, and a couple of days earlier, a week earlier, I remember my kid saying to me, "Hey, Dad, let's go jump on the trampoline," after I got home from work. And I had to look him in the eye, and I had to say, "I'm sorry, guys, I can't." I was exhausted, but I was 60 pounds overweight. I was miserable. I was depressed. Like it just was not a good position. And that was the moment. That was a very cathartic moment for me because I realized in that moment that, like you said, I wasn't able to provide the experience of something simple like jumping on the trampoline with my kids.
Dude, you're like speaking to me right now. You know, we have a newsletter. It's called Never Zero because we believe like momentum should never hit zero. And I get responses all the time. But like that one right there, like what you just said, that's exactly the way I feel. Like I never, ever want my fitness to inhibit what I need or want to do with my family or what I need to do for myself. And it's within my control. And now some people listening are gonna be like, dude, this guy is like singing from the, you know, fitness, whatever. It's like, yeah, I believe that working out has so many auxiliary benefits that we don't talk about enough as men, including, yes, do you want to look good? Do you want to feel good? Of course, those things are natural. Like, yes, but if that doesn't motivate you, how about all the mindset things you can learn to overcome and, you know, take some of this like anxious energy that I think a lot of guys have, including myself, and you go hit the mats, you go hit the gym, and it just makes you a different person for the rest of the day.
Yeah. How do you balance or even teach guys? Because I think, you know, I'm trying to think about what guys who are listening might think of this conversation. And I'm sure you hear this all the time. Oh, well, you know, if I was in your shoes, right?
Of course.
It'd be easy to, you know, be fit and be strong. And if I had what you had, the time, the money, the energy, the resources, then I would look like you too. That's complete garbage. I hate hearing that. But that is what a lot of guys think. So what do you tell the guy who is, an average Joe who's got a 9 to 5, he's got a wife and a couple of kids, he's making okay money, he's maybe got some aspirational career things that he wants to accomplish. Like, how does that guy get into the world of fitness to ensure that not only is he doing it, but also balances it with everything else that he has going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is like, I understand if someone's like, hey, you do fitness for a living, it's easy for you to go to jiu-jitsu, do all these different things. Like, okay, all right. Like, but what other option do you have as a 9 to 5 or whatever you do for a living? Like, what option do you have not to stay fit? Like, you don't have another option. You need to stay fit for your family. Like, you need to stay fit to be the most jacked grandpa on the planet. And you need to allocate time and prioritize it. And I think everybody has 30 minutes a day to get after a workout. And if you don't, then you have to reevaluate what you're spending your time on. Because I guarantee you, if you look at it, you have 30 minutes a day to hit a quit EMOM, which I could explain more about. Or like this morning, for example, early, my daughter and I went for a walk. I put a 50-pound ruck on and I added some external load to my ruck, to my walk. So now not only am I getting time with my daughter to connect with her, but I'm also getting in some additional fitness. So that's another kind of tip that guys could take away. But I think the main question you're asking, Ryan, is like, how do guys prioritize their fitness? And I believe that once you make it a part of your routine, you'll start to realize that everything else starts to follow from it. Meaning, if you wake up an extra 30 minutes early and you just did burpees every minute on the minute, 10 of them, let's just say, or 5 of them, or whatever, if you went for a quick jog, you're going to see that your day is just going to be off to a better foot. And you just got to prioritize that and make time and find the right program. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated. It just needs to be effective. And I could talk a lot about that, about compound movements, EMOMs, AMRAPs, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, if you're a guy listening who has a traditional job, ask yourself this very question, like, what other option do you have than to get in some sort of fitness? I'm not saying you have to train for 3 hours a day, but some sort of fitness almost every day. You really don't have another option, because what are you going to allow yourself to get to over time? Like, that's not okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also interesting too, is a lot of guys will ask me, hey, Ryan, I'm trying to improve myself. Where do I start? Like, start in the gym.
Dude.
Like, what do you mean? Like, shouldn't I journal? I mean, yeah, sure. Journal. I'm not going to bash on journal. Sure. Therapy. Sure. Like, whatever your thing is. I like the gym for men, because especially if you've been out of the game for, let's say, 10 plus years and you're, 50, 60, 70, 80 pounds overweight. If you go to the gym this week and you go, like you said, 30, 45 minutes per day, every day this week, and you cut out, let's just say, soda out of your diet, you are going to notice a difference in a week. Whereas journaling,
100%.
I don't know if you're going to notice the same type of difference that you'll see in your body changes in your composition over a week if you've let it go that far.
Dude. And all it takes, Ryan, is just to get sparked. So like I said, I've been hosting every week for the last 22 weeks. I've hosted a free men's club workout. So like, I'm putting my money where my mouth is, where I want to help our local community improve their fitness. And so I put it out on social, I put it on email, I put it on text, and I've seen a specific change in these men where they show up once a week, and then for the rest of the week, they try and get in whatever they can. And the energy that they bring back home is just night and day. I mean, here's the thing, like, the best gift the CrossFit Games ever gave me was not like the money, the prizes, all that stuff. It was really the ability to overcome microdose of adversity through competition. And I think you could do that same thing in the gym. Like, I think men who show up in the gym, who don't want to do it, but tell themselves they need to, who don't want to get that next rep, but they do it, they're all of a sudden, they're learning how to overcome these small doses of adversity. And I think when they leave the gym, it makes a huge difference. Like, I think learning how to talk to yourself in a more positive versus negative way, like you're coaching yourself through a workout, both of those things and earning your confidence carry over super well to real life. Like, and I'm a big believer in this, because so my daughter was diagnosed with leukemia in 2016 and she's doing well now. But through that journey, I specifically saw the impacts that going into the gym had on outside and real world. And that's why I'm so passionate about sharing this with men, because I think that they're missing out on that piece.
Yeah, no, it's powerful. Well, and I like the concept of what you're talking about. You hear these acronyms like EMOM or AMRAP, and people are like,
Yeah.
what the hell are you talking about?
Right.
But these are powerful little cues to help you just realize that, like, I had a hard time. I actually do a lot of strength training now. But I had a hard time getting into quote unquote your traditional lifting weights. And CrossFit got me to the game because it kept me engaged in a way that strength training or just weightlifting or even like running or something like that did not. So I would love to hear your explanation of, every minute on the minute, or as many rounds reps as possible. Cause I think these are very valuable cues that people can implement in their lives.
Yeah. So I'll kind of start here, pivoting from like mindset to more tangible takeaways from this particular episode, like, or at least from what I'm sharing. I spent the better part of my life meeting different coaches and trying to be the best and fittest person on earth in the CrossFit Games. Started in the fitness space when I was 15 at a conventional gym. I found Muay Thai. I found traditional bodybuilding. Then I got into CrossFit. I found powerlifting through that and gymnastics through that and Olympic lifting through that and all those different things. And throughout the journey competing professionally in CrossFit, I would go meet all these coaches and I would also teach seminars for CrossFit. Well, the reason why I share that is that if I could give anybody some cliff notes who's listening, out of all those years that I've been doing this, there's a few things to think about. Number one is that your body wants to create adaptation. So if your body finds itself in a state of, if it gets pushed to the red, your body's smart and wants to create some type of adaptation. So we need to add in some level of intensity or effort to shock your system a little bit, for your system to say, oh, wow, that was really hard. I want to create adaptation. Whether that's external loading and heavy lifting to break down muscle fibers to rebuild, or you're talking about more like lung capacity, you need to push yourself in those areas to ever see those type of benefits. If all you're doing is walking, that's a step. But you need to get that intensity to really start to unlock the potential of your body. So that's one thing, is maximal effort for duration of time. How long would be the next question. I think 12 to 15 minutes is a really great range. And the reason why I like this range, I think for most guys, is it helps you work this anaerobic and aerobic system. So aerobic being like utilizing oxygen, kind of the longer term, and anaerobic, just kind of like this fast twitch, quick efforts. We want to kind of be somewhere in the middle of that. So you could carry itself well to a 100-meter sprint. It could also carry itself well to a 3-mile run. So that 12 to 15 minute time frame is a good time frame. Now, what type of movements to incorporate and how to incorporate them? I think looking at movements in terms of function and not in terms of muscle group is a great place to start for people listening. Oftentimes we hear people say, oh, I worked my bis and tris today. Say, okay, cool. Like, that's all good. I worked my, whatever. If that's what you want to train is working for you, keep doing what you're doing. The way I like to train is I want to hinge, I want to squat, and I want to press once a week. So that means deadlift, bench, all these different types of presses, different types of squats, different types of hinge. And I want to make sure that I get my heart rate elevated every day. So I'll use multi-joint movements like a thruster, a deadlift, a back squat, a press, anything. And if you ask me like what muscle groups am I using, I'll be like, I don't know, man, a lot of them. But it's the function.
Compound movements.
Exactly. It's the function I'm looking for. Like I'm lowering and raising my center of mass, or I'm pressing overhead versus, I'm working my upper delt or whatever it might be. And then final thing I'll say, and then, we could dive more into it if you want, is incorporating different styles of workouts. So an AMRAP is as many reps or as many rounds as possible. And the benefit there is that it's you against the clock. So let's just say I'm like, hey, Ryan, I want you to do an AMRAP of 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, and 15 squats for 10 minutes. You might get 5 rounds. Someone listening might get 8 rounds. But now the next time you try and get that score or a little bit better, but it's as many rounds or reps in that time frame. The other way to train that is probably my favorite is an EMOM. An EMOM is every minute on the minute. And this style of training I think is really conducive because it's you racing the clock on a minute basis. So sometimes you don't have a training partner. You don't know how well you're doing. But an example of an EMOM would be 15 burpees every minute for 10 minutes. So if you finish in 30 seconds, you get 30 seconds rest. If you finish in 45 seconds, you get 15 seconds rest. If you don't finish at all, you might need to drop the number. But the goal is every minute you get to see, am I achieving my goal? Am I hitting what I set out to do? And if not, then reevaluate and crush the next minute. That's why I love EMOMs.
Yeah, and I think that component of tracking it is important too. Because if you're not tracking it, you don't know what you're measuring yourself against. But in the world of CrossFit, one of the things that I really valued was the competitive nature of it. And it pushed me harder than I would do on my own. You know, if I saw somebody who was a friend of mine, maybe a similar build, maybe we started at the same time and we're doing every minute on the minute, and I see him get, 8.5 rounds, bro, I want 9 rounds. But if he wasn't there, I might get 7. So I like that competitive nature. And I think that speaks to what you're talking about, getting the guys together in the neighborhood and community working together. Because when men band together, if it's done in a healthy way, that competitive nature can actually push all of us in a very healthy way.
For sure. For sure. And if you don't have that network, I 100% agree with you, Ryan. But if you don't have that network, you can go to a local CrossFit gym, you can go find a local gym, you can find a jiu-jitsu gym, or you can just race the clock. Meaning, if, for example, we have our Train Hard app and we put on there, we give you goals during an EMOM. You could then, let's just say the first minute you get 10, your goal now is to get 10 again and 10 again. And so now if you don't have that camaraderie with other people around, you could use your clock as an indicator of your success instead of just kind of like, not having anything to go off of.
And the counter to that, you talked about isolating muscle groups. For example, I was sitting in the gym this morning doing preacher curls, which obviously is designed to isolate the bicep, right? Like that's it. Like no shoulder, no back. Like we're just going to isolate this bicep right here and see if we can get maximum lift from this. I think it makes sense, but I almost wonder if it's purely an aesthetic decision to make. I mean, obviously there's benefits to having bigger muscles, even if they are just isolated groups. But to me, it seems like it's more of an aesthetic approach as opposed to a functional approach. Like you said earlier, having to chase somebody down, or the scenario I thought of was, if your child or your wife is trapped inside of a car, could you yank that car door open? Right. If you got into an accident, those are the types of things that I think really, really are going to apply more often than, hey, how good am I at the preacher curl?
Yeah. And so just to be fair, we have a program that's called Flex, and there's a gentleman that programs that with me named Gabe, and he's a hard gainer. It's hard for him to gain size, and he wants to gain size. That's important to him to look the part that he wants to look. And so he's created this progressive overload bodybuilding program for people who maybe are harder gainers or who desire to have that aesthetic appeal. It's just, for me, I focus more on like functional capacity, but I also want to look good. I just am I'm not necessarily striving for increased muscle size, but if you are, then you definitely want to be on a more structured program with progressive overloading. So that's a program we have too, but it's just not the one that I tailor as much of my training to, because I'm more looking for like the hard, EMOMs, AMRAPs, whatever. And then I go, and then that transfers over really well to the mats for me.
Yeah, I've noticed that personally. Like CrossFit, I think I would say I got more fit, quote unquote fit, when I was doing CrossFit. I've definitely got bigger doing strength training.
For sure. And I think you got to listen to like, what is your why and what are you trying to accomplish? Like if you're listening to this podcast, you're like, all right, well, like, I don't, now I kind of get an idea what an EMOM is, I get an AMRAP, but like, how do I embrace that? Well, I think it really just depends on what your goals are. If you want to, get ready for summertime and you really want to get bigger, well, then you have to eat and train in a way that's going to help you get there. If you instead want to say, hey, I want to lose a couple of pounds, I want to be overall fit, well, then those are two different goals, and you just got to identify where you're at on your journey and then just go pick it and get after it.
I think the biggest thing for me, Jason, is just, I really don't, like the end goal is important, but I think for the most part, most men have the same goal as it relates to fitness, is like, hey, I want to be fit. I want to be capable. I want to look good with my shirt off, if I'm at the beach, or I want my wife to look at me and think I'm sexy if we're going to, be intimate and have sex. Like, I think we all want the same thing. To me, I think for the most part, it comes down to, and I'm trying to think about this before I say it, but I think for the most part, the biggest goal that any man should have, you correct me if you think I'm wrong, is what can you do that will keep you in the game the longest? Like, I know so many guys are like, I don't like jiu-jitsu. Like, then stop going to jiu-jitsu. Like, they're like, well, like Jason talks about it and Jocko talks about it. And so I don't care if you don't like it. you're not going to do it. And then you're going to give yourself all sorts of excuses and reasons as to why you can't be in shape. Go run marathons. I don't really care. Like, find something you can sustain forever.
For sure. For sure. For us, like, I'll give you an example. We have 3 programs that I mainly float between. We have one that's act the part. It's called Force. It's like the functional one. We have one that look the part. That's like bodybuilding. We have an EBOM program. And the goal is like to never let momentum get to zero. So you might be able to funnel between those different programs. But like, to your point, like, I want to be as fit as possible for as long as possible. Like, my goal is to be fit for the rest of my life. And if that's the mentality I have, then I need to find things that really call to me. And that could change, like, it was, for me, I was trying to hit, a 350 pounds, whatever. I was chasing this snatch number. I was chasing these clean and jerks. I was chasing winning the CrossFit Games. And that, for me, identified my fitness goals for many years. Now it's evolved. Like, dude, I just want to be the fittest, most capable dad and husband I could possibly be. And I am sure that'll change, where now I want to be the fittest, most capable grandpa I want to be. And then maybe that'll change in the future. But I need to keep chasing these things and finding the right programs that help me do it. Like, right now I'm training for tactical games because it seems appealing. Like, I want to try it. And that's the way I work. But other guys might be like, hey, maybe you just want to be able to play golf for the rest of your life. Well, let's put you on a program that allows you to have some general capacity so that your knees stay strong enough where you can walk the course. That's an example. But identifying what your why is and then working that plan and knowing that's the long-term strategy, that's key.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think about it. I was doing some Spartan races, and then last year I did a Ragnar Relay race, and I have one coming up in the spring. And I don't really, honestly, I don't care if I win it. That's not really my driving, motivating factor. I just want to go spend good time with good people that I like and care about, and spend the time together. So if I was trying to win it, I think my training would be different than if I'm just trying to make sure that I get a good time, beat my time last year, that I don't kill myself, and then I'm, strong enough and capable enough that I can actually enjoy it versus it being miserable for me. And that requires different training, different schedules.
For sure. And learning new skills, like, and figuring out what you want to do, right? Like, so for me, jiu-jitsu really unlocks this side of my brain where I can learn new skills all the time. Now that I've gotten more into the tactical games, like, I'm learning all these new skills, and that's super, like, that's something that inspires me. But I do have more time than probably most people do to learn these and acquire these skills. So they need to figure out, like, what does their fitness time look like, and just stay dedicated to it. Because once they get on that path, dude, I'm telling you, they're going to look back 6 months from now and be like, they're so grateful that they got started on that journey. It's kind of like, the way I look at it is like, it's kind of like investing. Like, you're never going to look back 5 years from now and be like, oh, I wish I hadn't invested into that. It's like, well, after it compounds every day, every week, every year, it's like, holy shit, like, look at this impact now it's made, and it just becomes a part of your routine.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I do want to shift gears a little bit, because
Sure.
you had mentioned something a little bit in passing with your daughter being diagnosed with leukemia. How old was she when she was diagnosed?
She was like 4, about to turn 5.
Okay. Yeah. And where were you in your CrossFit career, or your life in general? Like, where were you, and then how did that deviate once you found out what was going on with her?
I mean, yeah. I mean, we were doing pretty good. We were, so my daughter was born in, so she was 2011. My son was born in 2016. So at the time I had 2 children. My son was like pretty young, right? And, or 2014, excuse me. And so in 2016, she was diagnosed. And so my son was like a year and a half old. My daughter was like, almost turning 5, et cetera. And I had been competing individually at the CrossFit Games for about a decade. And that took a lot of wear and tear on my relationships in terms of the commitment that was required. And my wife and I, we met when we were 14 in high school, and we've been together ever since. And so,
It's awesome.
I really look at her as like my partner. And so every year before the CrossFit Games, I didn't get into this thing for money or fame or any of that kind of stuff. I got into it when there really was no money or fame. So every year I would just like ask her, like, hey, are you ready to make this commitment with me? And eventually over time, it was like probably like, I don't know, 6 years in, 6 years in, I was competing year round. So I was competing at the open regionals, CrossFit Games, and I would go compete for the They had an invitational for Team USA that I competed in for years. It was just a lot of competition throughout the duration of the year. You never really had any time off. So anyways, we had conversations about this, and she had said that, hey, we got one more year and then we need to make a change. I was like, okay, cool. So I competed. I did well. I got back on the podium. And then I decided to go team that next year because of our conversation, which she was prepared to go indefinitely if I want to go team indefinitely. But then my daughter got sick after that CrossFit Games, and I retired from the sport immediately. So, the way I looked at it is, you have your business, your family, your fitness, or it depends on how you break it down. Obviously for me, it's like family, fitness, business, like 3 different categories in my life. And at that point, it was a non-negotiable that there was nothing more important than getting her well again. And so I wrote an email that night. I essentially put the company in the hands of like the president of our company. And then I retired from the sport that same day. And it was the easiest decision I've ever made, like it was, people ask me, oh, was it tough? It's like, no, man, like I would hope you would do the same situation, like it wasn't that hard because it was so blatantly obvious what the right thing to do was.
Yeah. What you said, you put the business in the hands of your president. What was the business at the time? Was it the same business you have now, or?
So, yeah, our business evolved. So in 2008, I opened up, at the time it was called NorCal CrossFit. We had, multiple locations. So at the time Ava got sick, we had about maybe 30 locations globally, between corporate wellness, brick and mortar, and we had a digital business. And that was in 2016. So, quite a few employees, it was definitely a relatively robust business. And I just pivoted away. And luckily I was able to kind of get back in the fold like a month or 2 later and kind of play my role and then kind of get out. And we had a phenomenal team that helped. And then that business is now underneath the umbrella of NC Fit. So NC Fit, originally born, NorCal, we own and operate gyms. We service gym owners, and we do corporate wellness for Lucas Films. And so that business is really for gym owners, coaches, and brick and mortar. And then we rolled out another company called Train Hard, which has some similar employees. And the goal for that is to help men and women train, protect, provide. And it's more of a digital business. So that is another business we have.
Got it. Yeah. All in the same vein, but just different, multiple different avenues that you explore. That's interesting with Lucasfilm. So are you contracted by Disney or Lucasfilms to help with their day-to-day type employees or actors, or what does that actually look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, we service, our company's been servicing for a while. It's called LDAC, Lucas Digital Arts, and it's in San Francisco. And it's Lucasfilms is one of the major, one of the tenants there. And there's other tenants as well, but we run and manage that particular facility. Along with, at the time, we were doing a lot of other corporate wellness. We've since pivoted away from doing as much corporate wellness. So they're our main corporate wellness client. And then we have our brick and mortar in the Bay Area.
Got it. It is interesting when you see large employers like Lucasfilms or some of these others that I'm sure you work with, that place a priority on the wellness of their employees. And look, this is the cynical side of me. They don't really care about the wellness of their employees. I just want to be really clear about that. Most large organizations don't. What they care about is their bottom line. But it is interesting that they recognize there's a direct correlation between their employees being well and fit and their bottom line. There's something to be learned from that.
Yeah. I mean, from my experience, we've serviced Twitter, GoPro, we've done some stuff with Facebook. We've done some stuff we've done Western Digital. We had at one point 20 locations of them globally. So, we've had quite a few clients. And I would say that for the most part, I agree with you. I definitely think there's some people in leadership who do see a lot of value in fitness. However, for the most part, it does come down to a bottom line. And if they could drive, we've been able to show tangible results where if people come in and do CrossFit, they create better connections with each other. It fosters this sense of connection. The productivity increases. And what we found from one study we did, this was like 10 years ago, it was pretty crazy, that statistically we looked at the people that got like bonuses versus the people that came into classes. And we did it without knowing the names, and it was all proprietary. But we found that if you came into fitness, typically more times than not, you're also a higher performer in your particular organization, which would make sense. I can't remember the exact study we did, but it was years ago. And it just validated that if you put a gym on site, if you encourage this type of productivity, if you encourage people to connecting through shared suffering, it has an impact on others.
I'm curious on that, is if it's like a correlation or a causation. It reminds me, you'll hear a lot of people talk about oral health being, important because those with good oral health have good overall health. I'm like, well, is that causation, or is it just correlation? Because people who have good oral health probably have good discipline around brushing their teeth, flossing, proper oral hygiene, et cetera, because they're disciplined in other facets of their life. So I'm curious what you think on is it correlation that they're, bringing the right people in and the right people happen to be working out, or is it causation? It's kind of an interesting thought about it.
Yeah, I think that at the nut, what we're seeing is creating a culture. So, for example, we provide the fitness to Customs and Border Protection, and specifically their SRT unit. And I've really enjoyed working with a bunch of different law enforcement groups, but in particular this group. And it's interesting because when you start to identify the culture within the unit and creating a culture where like the norm is that we are going to be fit, we are going to be capable, and how it permeates in other areas of their job is pretty interesting. So what we found in corporate wellness is that you create a culture where like, dude, it's just a known thing that when we get off work, we're going to go jump into the gym. And then all of a sudden those people go into the gym, and now are you now recruiting people who had those similar interests, or are people who had no interest before now being turned on to it and getting their life changed by it? Both of those things were both happening. So it's hard to say I get your question, but it's hard to say exactly that. Either way, it's great.
Yeah, and maybe that's what I was going to say. Maybe the question doesn't really matter, because it doesn't matter if you're getting people who are lazy to not be lazy, or getting people who are fit to actually join your organization. Both are wins.
Dude, 100%. I agree with you. Yeah, so it's been a cool journey. Like I said, I started at the front desk when I was young. I own and operate gyms. We did a lot of stuff overseas for a long time with Western Digital, which was pretty cool. Open locations in Singapore, Thailand, China, whatever. And you had to learn how to work with other people from different, backgrounds. And then meanwhile, trying to, overcome everything, the challenges, spending a lot of time in the hospital and whatnot. That's why I'm just such an advocate for fitness, because I've seen firsthand how when your back's up against the wall, fitness can help you get through that. And everybody goes through things, whatever it might be that you have going on in your life. I still think that when that stress, when that anxiety, when that anxiousness hits you as a man in particular, I can speak on that behalf. When you go get after it, dude, you leave feeling better. There's no doubt.
I think we all inherently know that. And I know the reason we know that to be true is because if you ask any guy who is going through a difficult situation in his life, let's say a divorce or a bankruptcy or a loss of a job or a loss of a loved one, anything that could happen, I think you're going to have two camps. You're going to have a bunch of guys who use it as an excuse to self-sabotage and implode and destroy their lives. They turn to abuse, alcohol abuse, and substance abuse and coping mechanisms. And then you have another group of guys who's like, you'll hear about guys who go through a divorce, for example, and all of a sudden, 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, they're as jacked and ripped and strong and fit as they've ever been in their entire lives. Like, we inherently know that when things are stressful, go for a run, go to the gym. Unfortunately, and I'm guilty of this, we only do it when things get bad, and we're not preemptive about it. We're more reactionary about it, in my experience anyways.
Yeah, man. I mean, for me, it's like, it's just been a part of my lifestyle for so long that I now don't know what I would do without it. Today I was just on the mats, and my instructor's, mom just passed away, and he was using this as an outlet. He needed time to recharge his batteries and so him and I went at it hard. And he surely wasn't thinking about that. He was just thinking about not trying to get choked, and vice versa. And I think that you need those times, you need those outlets, especially as a guy. You're at work, you're grinding, you're trying to provide, you're trying to, put it in. Then you get home and it's like, okay, you're trying to be the best dad you could be. But sometimes you just need that third space, that little thing that you could do, not the bar, not the whatever, but the garage or the gym or the jiu-jitsu mats, where you can not be at either of those places, so you can show up at both those places at 100% for those people around you,
Well, and I think it's also good to have good men in your corner like this, because I imagine it's not that you don't care that his mother passed away, but you're not going to use that as a reason to take it easy on him when all of society will. Like, oh, he's going through a hard time. He's having a hard, let's take it easy. Let's make excuses. And you get on the mats, like, if it were me, I'm like, I'm not going any easier on you. Like, I'm going to go as hard as I want. Yeah, for sure. And he probably is appreciative of that because nobody else is going to do it. And this is the power of having men in your corner.
Yeah. I mean, basically what went down, I'll just tell you straight up. I mean, this just happened an hour ago, is that he told me what happened, right? Because I knew his mom was in the hospital. So I had been reaching out to him. Hey man, how's it been going? But, et cetera. And he told me today that she had passed. And obviously I shared my, sincere apologies. And then we got after it hard for maybe 20, 30 minutes. And then afterwards, I just gave him a handshake and hug. I was like, hey man, I'm really sorry. I'm here for you. And that was it. Right. He needed that little outlet. And I think that all guys can appreciate that. And it's like, dude, we're just one step away from being able to do that. Start a clock, hit some burpees. And dude, I promise you're going to feel like a new man coming out of it.
Yeah. You talked about a little bit ago, the power of culture and being in the right culture. A lot of guys find themselves in the wrong culture. They work for an organization that doesn't embrace this, or they've got a bunch of people in their lives, whether it's family or friends, who don't embrace this kind of lifestyle. What is a man who's in that position, who's listening to this podcast or has a desire to make himself fit and strong and capable in all these ways, and he wants to change the culture, right? Like, I think that's what we as men want to do. We want to invite people around us. We want to uplift people around us. What does a guy like that do, either in the professional front and or the personal front?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but I do think what's important is understanding what your why is. What is the reason why you're doing any of this stuff? Not to go way deep, but even just at a surface level, why, if for example, you need to have a strong why of why you want to, work out and train. If you don't have a strong reason, for me, it's my family. And so if this gentleman who's listening to this right now, it's okay, I want to be fit and capable for my family. Okay, cool. I want to be able to provide for them and I want to be happy. Well, what steps can I take in the right direction to get out of this culture that I'm currently in, to find the right people around me? And it could be hard in the beginning, because right now, if you're in a culture and you have friendships and maybe you want to go in a different direction, dude, it's difficult because you're going to feel like the outlier. If you're at events and everybody else wants to just drink and stay up all night and you want to get up early to go work out, you might get looked at as that guy. But you have to be prepared to be that guy. And it's not that weird. You got to find your own balance and your own people. And what you'll find is that over time, when you leave one circle, another door will open that will be just as, even more inviting. You'll feel even more connected. When I have all these guys we get after it in the workouts with, I intentionally do it at 5:30 tomorrow morning because I want to see who's prepared to show up. And everybody there knows that everybody else prioritized their fitness to not drink the night before and get all whatever, so they could show up and they could be around all these like-minded people. And now all of a sudden they create connections. And now that becomes potentially part of their new circle. And I'm not saying you have to get rid of all your old friends, that kind of stuff. What you'll find is that over time, you'll just get connected to people that are on the same path and have the same why as you. And you just got to be more open-minded to that if you're not happy with your current situation.
Yeah, I'm just taking some notes here. It was funny when I moved to Maine years ago. I went to a local tire shop and I said, "Hey, you got a bunch of big tractor tires in the back? I can see them."
Yeah.
And I said, "Can I buy those from you?" And they're like, "No, we'll just give them to you because we have to pay to get them taken away or whatever. We'll just give them to you. That helps us." I'm like, "Sweet." So I got 5 of them. And I would go out in the yard and we were at a busy intersection, but I'd be flipping tires or hitting the sledgehammer or carrying kettlebells or just doing weird shit in my front yard. And I went to the convenience store one day and the woman there said, "Hey, you know what people are calling you around the neighborhood?" And I'm like, "I didn't realize people were calling me anything. What are they calling me?" And they said, "You guys are the weird workout people." And I'm like, "Perfect. I'll take that all day long. That's a compliment to me." But yeah, people are going to look at you weird because they don't understand. And you know what? If I don't actually care really if somebody who isn't wanting to grow, develop, get better, improve themselves in all ways doesn't understand me. That's not a bug. That's actually a feature. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And it feels weird, right? Because, you can sometimes feel isolated and alone, especially if your partner is not on that same journey. But if you're really committed to where you want to go and what you want to do, like you just got to communicate well with that partner. Like fortunately for me, like my wife and I, we are on very similar pages. And at times I've made mistakes where I have been too overzealous about things, meaning like I was so deep into CrossFit. I taught seminars every weekend. I competed professionally. Like I owned a gym. I mean, you name it, I was in it. And so every call, every dinner, every meeting we had was always about CrossFit. And eventually it just kind of turned her off, you know, because it was just too much. And so once I backed off and allowed her to find her own journey with fitness, now we have a phenomenal relationship around it because I just need to give her space and not be all like, just because I might want to work out multiple times a day and get after it doesn't mean that my spouse needs to, but we need to have good conversations about what it means to stay healthy for our children. And as long as we're doing that, it's all good. It just might look a little bit different between the two of us.
Yeah, but do you talk with any guys? And I'm glad. That's awesome that you have a wife who's fully on board with that. But how many guys do you talk with who are motivated and ambitious about this, and they have wives who are like either not interested or like if that's neutral, right? Like I'm not interested, and it might even be worse than neutral where they're against it for whatever reason. How often do you meet with people like that?
So, you know, from all the years I've been doing this, in particular with the men's club that we started about maybe, you know, every week about 6-7 months ago, I would say that more times than not, the women are very supportive. From my experience, from my experience, I've received text messages like, it's so funny. We hosted one of the first men's club and this woman texted me. She's like, hey, my husband came home different today. And I was like, I was like, I don't know exactly what you mean. I don't know if he brought it. You know, I don't know what he meant.
I hope he did.
She's like,
I hope he did.
Right?
I hope you both are satisfied.
That's what I was saying, right? And, you know, I think part of me has this insecurity where, so what we do is we just like do local meetups like in parking lots and stuff. And I just text a group and say where to meet up. And the other day we're pushing sleds up this big hill and this woman comes out of her house and she has her coffee mug. I'm just thinking, oh man, we're going to get yelled at. And she just looks at us, she's just like, looked at us like nodded her head, like, nice work, gentlemen, and then went back in her room. I think that there is a resurgence of people who want to see men do hard things. And I think that a lot of wives are receptive to it as long as you communicate it effectively. Because I have also been the guy who, you know, again, I'm eating for carnivore, I'm eating paleo, I'm eating zone, and I try and encourage too much on my spouse. But once she found what worked for her, which is creating a small group of women that work out every day in our garage, that's what works for her. I find that more times than not, the spouse is supportive if it's communicated effectively on why it's important to the guy.
Not only important to the guy, but important to the family. You know, if I'm communicating with my partner, I'm saying, hey, I'm going to go to the gym this morning, especially if you're doing it in a way that doesn't take away from the family. Like if I wake up at 5 a.m., like me going to the gym at 5 or 5:30, or I go in at about 6 o'clock every morning, that doesn't impede on my kids' time. So I'm not taking away anything from my relationship with my kids, but I've learned if you communicate it effectively in a way that not only is serving for you, but how this is going to serve everybody else, that seems to be pretty effective as well.
For sure. I mean, and you know, what really has helped me with my family is that, and this goes for my son too. So my son is about to turn 10 and he's definitely got the, like, he could be aggressive, like at sport, and he has like a lot of energy. Right. And so sometimes he'll come in and he'll just be like, I'll be like, bro, go hit the cold plunge. I'll be like, nope, go hit the cold plunge, or go in the garage. I'll meet you in there. We're going to do a 10-minute AMRAP. I'll see you in a second. Because you could tell he's got too much, and it comes out in ways where it's not constructive, especially in young men. And so I find that with my son in particular, like I believe that jiu-jitsu and self-defense is important. I believe that all these different things, but not to go off on a tangent, but the point I'm trying to make here is that my wife and my family knows that if they see me in like a little bit of a funk, chances are I didn't get after it. And so they encourage me, hey Jay, you got to go get after it. Like, go get after it. I'll see you in 30 minutes because you have a lot of energy right now. We could feel that energy and you need to go, you know, I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but that's been key for me too, is that they want it for me just as much as I want it for myself.
Yeah, I think every man knows what you're talking about. Like we feel it, right? Like I might have a bad day at work, for example, and I might, if I don't go work out, I don't go train, I don't go do something physical, I might let that creep into the relationship I have with my kids or anybody else. And it hinders and hurts the relationship versus, hey, let me direct this towards a powerful outlet. I actually think that's one of the things that is wrong with society and specifically the educational system for our young men. You know, these boys, your son's 10. So what's he in 5th grade? Right. So
he's in 4th grade.
4th grade. Yeah. So he's in 4th grade.
He's 9. He's 9. He turns 10 like in 2 months. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. So he's right there. So, you know, sit down, shut up, color within the lines, do what you're told, follow directions, you know, maybe even wear this specific thing. And that's not what we as men want to do. Like we want to go explore. We want to take risks. We want to be physical. We want to, you know, build things, destroy things like that. Man, if we could find a way to do that, and we have that available through some of the outlets that you're talking about, they're just not getting it enough day to day because they're in school all day long doing the opposite of what they ought to be doing.
Dude, yeah, it's something that's a big conflict, not a big conflict. That's something I think about a lot. You know, a lot of our friends have pursued homeschool. I think that's definitely a route. We have not pursued that route. We're a more traditional private Catholic school for our kids, but we recognize the pros and cons, I think, and we're trying to you know, do the best we can to navigate that, right? And you know, like with my son, like dude, I wouldn't want to sit in a chair for 8 hours either. Like right now I'm at a standing desk and I wouldn't want to sit down for 8 hours. I would go nuts. It'd be the worst. And so I can't blame them. And so, you know, we have to every day, we got to sweat, we got to move, and we got to get after it. And whether that's baseball, football, jiu-jitsu, or just working out is an outlet that I think that is really necessary for young boys. You know, I think that this idea that you go to school and you come home and you play video games and you're just sedentary, I just think it's not going to have a good ending to it for a lot of people. And I think that we need to make sure that especially young boys are getting the outlets they need to express that energy that we were talking about right now.
Yeah. I do want to bring up a point of clarification and a slight disagreement. So I want to talk about
which
this.
one? Yeah, let's do it.
You said we take more of the traditional route of, I think you said Catholic private school. The traditional route is homeschooling. I just want to be very clear about that. The traditional route is men leading their boys in the field, taking care of the fields, taking care of the crops, taking care of the cows, taking care of the harvest. I just want to make sure I clarify because that's my belief.
You're talking like old
anyways.
school tradition.
That's the traditional way.
Yeah. Matt Boudreaux would be on right now. I'd be like, yeah.
Exactly. Matt and I speak the same language for sure.
Yeah. And so, you know, I think for me, it's like, I was just talking to this gentleman, Ben Alderman, who's homeschooled all 4 of his kids. And, you know, I think there's a lot to unpack there. I think it's great. I think it has a lot of benefits. It's not the path that we chose. But I think that, recognizing that in itself and seeing how we could take things from that community and embrace it into what we're currently doing, I think is the key. But I get what you're saying. That was good. I thought you were going to say something that makes sense. I get it.
Yeah, no, I think one of the things though I appreciate about what you're doing in all fairness is, and I don't see this a lot with everybody, is they'll pawn their kids off to the school district. And that's not what I'm saying. And that's not what you do. I'm not even suggesting that. But that's what a lot of people do. But if your kids go into the public school system, great, whatever. That if that's a dynamic that works for you, but don't think for a second that absolves you of the responsibility of telling your boy, hey, we're going to go do an AMRAP, or we're going to go out hunt, or we're going to go train jiu-jitsu, or we're going to go out and play or wrestle or jump on the trampoline this afternoon. Yeah, they might be there for 6, 7, 8 hours a day, but you as a father still have a responsibility for them when they're with you at home.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny. Something I think about all the time is like, you only get so many no's before they no longer ask anymore. So like my son in particular, he's very active. So he'll come home from school, guaranteed he'll be home from school in 30 minutes. Guaranteed he's going to walk and be like, Dad, let's go play football. Dad, let's go do this. Dad, let's go do this.
It's awesome.
And I only get so many no's, right, before he just stops asking. That's something I think about all the time, is that for a while, I wasn't doing a good job, and I'm being much more like aware of this now. I used to be on conference calls a lot with Asia when I would be at home, and we would work different hours. So Asia, my calls would be like at, I don't know, 6 p.m., because it would be morning their time. And I would do a terrible job of isolating myself. And then I'd walk in, I'd be on the phone still, and I would kind of like, hey, 1 minute, you know, that kind of thing. And I had to learn that like when I'm in the house, when I'm in their presence, like I need to let them know that they're our top priority. And so instead I'll just stay in the office or I'll stay in my car and finish the call instead of going in, because I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm like putting my finger up like 1 minute or no, not right now. I'd rather just stay away from that situation. Like if I'm talking to you, for example, I'd rather just be up in an office than be in front of them and have to like not make them feel like they're being prioritized. And that same thing goes when they ask to go do stuff. Like I have to really be selective. I'm like, hey man, you only get so many no's before. Like the worst thing would be if he just continues to come home and he never asks me to go do anything anymore. I'd be like, fuck, that sucks. So that's something I think about a lot.
I think that's a really valid point. And it also applies the other way. So if you're with your family or with your son or your daughter or your family, whatever it may be, then they get the priority. So it's all them. And that's one thing I've had to be aware of, especially because my work is all right on this device, you know? And so it's like, hey, when I'm here with you guys. When I'm watching your game, I'm watching your game. When we're wrestling or playing or laughing, or even if we're playing a video game, which we do, you know, we'll play a video game and we'll do that together. I'm all in with you guys in the moment. My youngest son, about a week ago, said, "Hey, Dad, can we go buy a lacrosse stick?" He's 7 years old, and his oldest brother is starting to play lacrosse. I'm like, "Yeah, of course." You know, normally I might be like, "Nah, I don't want to go. I don't want to spend the money." But I'm like, "Yeah, dude, if that's what you want to do, and that's what it takes for us to go outside and playing catch is actually with lacrosse, I'm all about it. I don't know anything about lacrosse, but if that's what you want to do and that's what's going to get you involved with me, then by all means, let's go spend $50 and get it taken care of."
Dude, 100%. Because like, what would be the other option? Like, imagine if you think about that at first, like, okay, do I want to go to the store? Do I want to go take out of my way? I don't know anything about lacrosse. Do I want to go spend this money? Do I want to go commit to this? It's another sport. Like, all these like things go through your mind, right? And then, but like, what's the other option? You say no. Like now it's like, like potentially you're not unlocking. Like maybe this becomes his sport. Maybe this like those are the things that I think about a lot. Is like we as parents have an obligation to try and help guide our young men and women as best we can. And it's like if that's what they're asking for and it's something constructive and maybe it could be something that you guys could do together, like that's awesome. Even though it's not necessarily always the easiest decision. Like my son last week really wanted to go snowboarding. I'm like, damn, we got to drive 4 hours. We got to buy a lift ticket. I had all the excuses in the book, but it's like at the end of the day, it's like that means they want to spend time with you. And that's maybe not something you're going to get for the rest of your life. So you might as well take advantage of it now,
Yeah, for sure. I've got a friend that frames it. I think he talks about it in the concept of 18 summers. It's like you only have 18 of those. Like that's it. My oldest is turning 16 next month. I mean, he's all but gone anyways. He's got a girlfriend. He's got sports. He's got lacrosse. He's got friends. He's 16. He's not even 16. He's 15. Man, once he hits 16, he's going to have a vehicle. He's already bought his first truck. He's going to be gone. Like it's not even 18. It's 16 if we're being honest about it.
Yeah. And so you're right. Like 16 summers. And so that's just something. And look, I understand from a practical perspective, it's not always perfect, but something I think about all the time is like, if I ask myself, like, I don't know, let's just say you're, I don't know, on a walk at night or whatever you got, if you want to do like a micro check-in, like, hey, how am I doing in these different areas? I think if you continue to do these micro check-ins, because I don't want to come off on this podcast like I'm perfect at all these areas. Like, dude, my wife and I have been together a really long time and we are constantly talking, communicating, and figuring out how we could be better, right? And I think that it starts with these micro check-ins so it doesn't turn into something massive in the future. Like if you're asking yourself on a weekly, bi-weekly basis, like, hey, how am I doing in business, family, fitness? Well, then you can make these little adjustments that could put you back on the right path. But if you, tend to avoid those conversations or those things for weeks, months, years, all of a sudden it's very hard to get back on the path. And so that's something I think about all the time is like, if I'm in the sauna or whatever I'm doing, it's like, okay, hey, I was traveling for work. How can I come home and really be present and focused and really prioritize here and then get back at it and find balance moving forward for the rest of the week. So that's been really helpful for me.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, brother, I can't believe how fast this time went. How do we connect with you, learn more about Train Hard, learn more about your programs? You've got a book out. How do we learn more about what you're up to?
Yeah, I mean, I think so yes, there's a Train Hard app. If you go to th.fit, that's the website, as in trainhard.fit, but th.fit, you could definitely check out our app. If you're looking for EMOMs, AMRAPs, if you're looking for our Force Flex program, boom, that's perfect for you. You could check out Jason Khalipa on Instagram. You could also join our newsletter. All those links are going to be in my Instagram bio. And we just send out weekly newsletters where we're just trying to add value, trying to share what's on our mind, or my mind in particular. And I also have a podcast where I do like short form, a little bit longer form, and we're kind of evolving the podcast into things that I'm really interested in, mainly talking about being a dad and getting after it in the gym. So if you're interested in that type of stuff, check out the podcast and newsletter and Instagram.
Right on. We'll sync it all up so the guys know where to go. Man, I appreciate you leading from the front. I'm inspired by you, so I'm glad that we're finally able to make this happen. Thanks, brother, for joining me today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.